presentation will focus on the economic factors that are considered in the water quality standards process. We'll discuss why economics may be considered, describe where in the process economics are considered, and we'll discuss how economic considerations are used in the water quality standards process. To appreciate why, where, and how economic considerations might be involved in the water quality standards process, we first need to understand a few of the important aspects of water quality standards. Under the Clean Water Act, states, territories, and Indian tribes that qualify for treatment as states are required to set water quality standards. The purpose of these standards is to protect public health, enhance the quality of the nation's waters, maintain fish, shellfish, and wildlife resources, and preserve the public's recreational uses of the nation's waters. There are several major elements of the water quality standards process. States select water bodies and designate the uses of the water bodies, uses such as recreation and the protection of fish and wildlife. These uses may exist currently, or they may be goals that could be attained in the future with improved water quality. Uses that are ultimately attainable are referred to as designated uses. States define their water quality standards in terms of these designated uses, or goals, and in terms of scientifically determined criteria that limit pollutants to the level needed to protect the designated use. A water quality standard, then, by definition, requires a use and criteria to protect the use. Water quality standards also contain an anti-degradation policy and a method for implementing it. As a part of the process, states set criteria, develop water quality standards, and hold public hearings to give the public an opportunity to review and comment on the proposed water quality standards. States hold public hearings at least once every 3 years to review existing water quality standards, to review proposed revisions to those standards, or to review new standards before they are adopted. After considering the information presented at the public hearings, states formally adopt water quality standards. Then, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, reviews the standards to ensure they meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act. When standards meet these requirements, EPA approves them, and states implement the standards. To comply with water quality standards, anyone discharging wastewater into a water body may need to install treatment technologies, undertake pollution prevention techniques, or adopt best management practices. There may be circumstances in which meeting water quality standards results in economic hardship to dischargers or to communities. In these situations, the federal regulation governing water quality standards allows states to consider the costs and economic impacts of meeting the standards. The rest of this presentation provides an overview of how dischargers go about demonstrating economic hardship and of how EPA reviews state decisions regarding a determination of economic hardship. Now, let's discuss why economics are considered. The federal regulation governing water quality standards is not intended to be so stringent that it would have severe economic impacts on communities. Thus, there are several places in the water quality standards process where economic considerations may be grounds for setting or changing the designated use of a water body. In addition to economic considerations, there may be other reasons for changing standards, such as physical conditions that prevent the attainment of a use. The first place economic considerations are addressed occurs when a state designates uses of a water body. At this point in the process, a use attainability analysis is performed. This analysis determines whether a designated use can realistically be achieved by studying the physical, chemical, biological, and economic factors associated with achieving a use. The second place where economics can be considered occurs if a state grants a variance to water quality standards. Variances are short-term exemptions from the standards that are used when the state is trying to determine whether the standard can be attained. The economic considerations for granting a variance are the same as those used when setting, modifying, or removing a designated use. That is, The discharger must demonstrate that substantial and widespread economic and social impacts would occur as a result of adopting the pollution reduction technologies or techniques necessary to meet water quality standards. Federal regulation also allows economic impacts to be considered when states develop their anti-degradation policy. In the case of the anti-degradation policy, states may lower water quality only if the lower water quality is necessary to accommodate important economic or social development in the area in which the waters are located. So far, we've focused on the states and the dischargers' roles in the water quality standards process. The public also has a responsibility. You can attend public hearings when designated uses are being reviewed, when an application is being made for a variance, or when changes in a designated use are being recommended. In addition, you have the right to submit comments on proposed changes to a designated use or on variances from water quality standards. Public involvement and participation are important aspects of the water quality standards process and are strongly encouraged by EPA. Now, let's turn to how economic considerations are addressed. First, the state and the discharger must consider all the alternatives that would allow the discharger to meet water quality standards. These alternatives include pollution prevention, such as changing raw materials or substituting processed chemicals, recycling and reuse, as well as end-of-pipe treatment. These alternatives are often associated with increased costs. When we think of how economic considerations fit into the water quality standards process, a chief concern is who will bear the cost of complying with water quality standards. Although states are responsible for setting water quality standards, individual wastewater dischargers may seek relief from these standards because of their costs of compliance. Dischargers may be either private entities or public entities. By private entities, we mean operations like industrial facilities, recreational developments, and shopping centers. When we speak of public entities, the most common example is a sewage treatment plant. There are also situations in which private entities, such as industrial facilities, discharge their waste to public sewage treatment plants. In such cases, both the private and public entities can suffer and claim economic hardship. In addition, adverse economic impacts from compliance costs can affect both point and non-point sources of pollution. Point sources include discharges from a single point of origin. Non-point sources are those that do not have a single point of origin, such as runoff from road construction or from a farm. As I mentioned, to change water quality standards for economic reasons, the discharger must demonstrate that the economic impact of complying with water quality standards will be substantial and widespread. The substantial part of substantial and widespread focuses on the cost of pollution reduction and on the discharger's ability to pay for necessary pollution reductions. In considering the ability to pay, various aspects of the discharger's financial health should be reviewed. Does the discharger have ample financial resources? Would the discharger have difficulty raising the money to make the capital investment in pollution reductions? And how would the discharger's profitability be affected? For a private entity, like a manufacturer, raising the money might require a loan from a bank. For a public entity, like a municipality, raising the money might require an increase in sewer system user fees or in local taxes. To demonstrate that economic impacts will also be widespread, the discharger must show that complying with the water quality standards will result in significant adverse impacts to the community, not just to the discharger. To do this, the discharger must define what the affected community would be by identifying who will bear the adverse impacts. The discharger must also evaluate the current characteristics of the community. Some examples of important characteristics to consider include household income, unemployment, expenditures on social services, and the amount of tax revenues currently paid to the community by the discharger. Next, the discharger needs to demonstrate what the impacts would be if the discharger were forced to meet water quality standards. Would people lose their jobs? Would other economic activities be affected? Will the community lose out on development opportunities? Because these impacts are site-specific, the decision as to whether the impacts are widespread must be based on local conditions. The EPA can provide you with information on the data and financial indicators that dischargers should use to demonstrate economic hardship, and that the states and EPA use to evaluate the economic impact to the discharger. These financial indicators are standard analytic tools used by businesses and governments to make decisions about their operations, such as when they evaluate potential investments or expansions. Measures of the impacts on the discharger and on the community help the states and EPA understand the complexity and specifics of each situation. With information about the financial and social costs, the states and EPA are better able to balance the need for pollution reductions with the other needs of the community. In summary, it's important to remember that water quality standards are designed to protect public health, enhance the quality of the nation's waters, maintain natural resources, and preserve the public's recreational uses. In addition, the important task of protecting water quality can include economic considerations because federal regulations require that costs and impacts at specific sites be a factor in developing water quality standards. For additional information and to learn more about the Water Quality Standards Program and about the role economic considerations play in water quality standards, contact EPA or your state water pollution control agency or its equivalent. Educational materials and information can be obtained from the following addresses: